Welcome to this author interaction of the NLF Reading Challenge 2023. My name is Deepti, and I hope you are as excited as I am to be here. Before we begin the interaction, let me give you a brief introduction about the NLF Reading Challenge, followed by a few housekeeping rules for today's session. The NLF Reading Challenge is a 3-month-long reading event from July to October 2023 for students between grades 4 to 6. It runs on the competitive as well as the non-competitive tracks. For the challenge, students read their way through a curated set of 30 books. They discuss their reading with their friends and their guide, log their thoughts, and get to interact with the authors of some of these books. The challenge will conclude with a quiz competition that will see the 3 best teams win gold, silver, and bronze engraved trophies, certificates of achievement, and a wonderful set of books. For today's event, please use the Q&A box to type out your questions or your responses to what's being discussed during the session. If you're a student, a teacher, or a school librarian, please mention the name of your school along with your question as well. In fact, if you already have your questions ready, please feel free to type them out. Today, we are honored to have with us the incredibly talented author, Katya Balen. Katya studied English at university, has worked at various special schools, and is a co-founder of Mainspring Arts, a charity that uses creativity to work with autistic people. Katya's debut novel, The Space We're In, published in 2019, draws from her own experiences in this area. Her second book, October, won the prestigious Carnegie Medal in 2022, as well as the UKLA Book Award. We are delighted to have her here with us to talk about her latest novel, The Light in Everything, which was shortlisted for the Carnegie Medal 2023 and also recently won the UKLA Book Award. The Light in Everything is a tender, heartwarming story about the struggles and anxieties of childhood, told from the perspectives of 2 very different children. Welcome, Katya. We're very happy to have you with us today.
Hello, I'm really happy to be here. Thank you so much for having me, and hello everyone. I'm going to read for a couple of minutes from the very beginning of The Light in Everything, so you get to hear the 2 different voices. Sophia. I was born in a storm. The sky cracked with lightning and thunder shook the sea. The rain lashed the cliffs and it was like the whole world tipped upside down and the ocean was falling from the sky. The weather was furious, and so was I. And the midwife said she'd never seen such an angry baby, and in all the photographs I am a red-faced ball of fury, and my fists are clenched, and my mouth is a shouting, "Oh!" I sometimes feel like that storm blasted its way into me. That's what Dad says when I'm being too loud and rowdy and raucous and shouty, which is a lot of the time, apparently. But I feel a spark and rumble inside me, and it's like the storm is stretching itself and waking up. Sometimes it goes back to sleep, and sometimes it really doesn't. And that's when Dad says things get turbulent. Dad and I are a pair, 2 peas in a pod, 2 halves of a whole, 2 guinea pigs in a hutch. I once read that you can't ever have 1 guinea pig because it will be so lonely that it might die. In Switzerland, it's actually illegal. I can't imagine being sent to prison and locked up day and night because you only had 1 guinea pig, but I guess that's what happens. Anyway, even though guinea pigs will die of loneliness, if you try to introduce another guinea pig into the hutch, then the other one will attack it and probably bite its head off or something. I'm happy with a dog and a cat. Dad and I like most of the same stuff. Well, he doesn't like very loud music or wearing gold Doc Martens or eating 20 Oreos in a row, but he loves the sea and jokes and watching really, really bad TV and spicy food and graphic novels. And he might actually like Oreos, but he's never quick enough to find out. Dad and I live in a cottage with sloping stone walls and a bright yellow front door and a front garden full of every wildflower in existence ever. If you look out of the windows or stand in the garden or just look up, then you can't just see the sea, but you can hear it and smell it, and sometimes you can taste it too. Our cottage looks like something out of a picture book. It has roses round the door that I used to make spells and potions with when my best friend Domo and I were little, and it has a winding path up to its yellow door. It's the kind of cottage from that kind of book where you see a mum and a dad and a little girl and maybe a dog that can fetch slippers, and it's a perfect little life. And that's what it's like. Well, we have a dog that's but he's more likely to eat the slippers than fetch them. And Mum died when I was a baby, but otherwise, it's exactly what it's like. I wouldn't change a thing about our lives right now. Oh, the dark around me is filled with light. That's what I tell myself. There is the acid orange glow of a street lamp just beyond the curtains. There is the gentle spill of yellow melting onto the carpet from my bedroom door. There is a slow red eye blink of a charger plugged into the wall opposite. But the space around me is stained with soot and ink and shadows. The shadows slink and twist and reach and grasp. They slither and slip into something new, and their edges blur and stretch. My fingers twitch. I gulp lungfuls of dirty, dark air, try to slow my breath and push away the black. Be my own light. My heart is clawing in my chest. I count the shapes I can see. 1, 2, 3. The shadows that creep and swirl on the walls are nothing but shapes, just a collection of angles and lines bound together by black. Shapes can't hurt you. They're nothing. The dark can't hurt you. 4, 5. But what's hiding in it can. 6. My heart is on fire. I reach out into the black nothing that swoops around my face like the flap of a bat and flip the emergency switch. Next. Light. Light streams in and pours and floods. Light swallows the darkness whole and shrinks it backwards into scraps that only flicker in the corners. Light splinters through the glass prisms that sit on my desk, and the walls are a dance of rainbows. I stop counting seconds and count the colours instead. I run through them like names of friends. I race through the syllables. Red, yellow, green, blue, indigo, violet. Red and yellow and green and blue and indigo and violet. Red and yellow and green and blue and indigo and violet. My heartbeat slows a little to something that isn't a dull howl against my ribs. I tap the clock on my bedside table and it glows. So does the liquid light of my lava lamp. I have 6 different types of light in my room. I made it 1 minute and 13 seconds without it. I get out a piece of square paper and I fold it. I follow the lines my fingers know, and I don't even have to think about the shapes I'm making. My heartbeat starts to match the slow and careful turns, and by the time I finish the paper star, everything is in rhythm again. I pull the duvet up to my chin and turn to face my lava lamp. When I close my eyes, there's no darkness, but instead illuminations painted on my lids like fireworks. In the morning before school, the sun is hung in the sky, and the darkness only scurries in the corners. Thank you.
Thank you, Katya, for that lovely reading. It was such a pleasure listening to your words come alive. So thank you for that. So let's jump right into the questions while we wait for the audience questions to come in. And as we just heard, your writing is exceptionally lyrical, and there's a beautiful poetic quality to it. Your words mirror the wild and free nature of your characters, such as Sophia, as well as October from your previous book. Could you share your journey of developing this distinct style? Does it flow naturally for you, or did it require conscious effort and refinement over time?
So I think that it's a hard question because I think it is quite natural. And I think that, writers have a voice that gets refined naturally as you write more and more and more, but always the bones of it are there because they're part of who you are. And I also think that the books that I loved when I was a child are books that were lyrical and beautiful and poetic. So on some level, I wanted to write those sort of books. I think that, writers who wrote really funny books tend to say that those were the books they loved the most when they were young. So I think it's sort of a sort of an unconscious effort to be like my favorite writers that just grew over time, and maybe, sort of the natural thing as well. So a bit of both.
So we actually have a question from the audience that's just come in. There's a team from Neve Academy called the Book Warriors, Aditya, Vihan, and Shashank. Say in the beginning of this book, she wants to swim to Fiji and is determined with her friend Domo to swim to it. Have you ever had such a determination to do something?
Or
to write a book?
Well, I think that's probably it. I think that from when I was a really small child, I wanted to be a writer. And I think that sort of spark just stayed in me and grew. And it was something that I couldn't ignore anymore. And I guess that's a little bit like Sophia in the book, where it's just what drives her. It's just this obsession. And I think that, that can be a really good thing. It can help you achieve your dreams, but it shouldn't be the only thing in your life, because that's not healthy either. But yeah, I think that steely determination for me was definitely writing.
But you also had another life, right? You worked with special schools. You've co-founded a charity called Mainspring Arts that uses creativity to engage with autistic children. So has that been an influence on your writing? You've of course
Definitely.
drawn from it, from in your debut book, The Space We're In, and you also delve into topics that may be considered outside the mainstream, such as divorce and growing up in the woods in October, and blended families in The Light and Everything. So, how do you how does this experience help you understand the multiple layers of a child's emotions and experiences in these challenging situations? And sorry for the long question, but moreover, what draws you to write about such important and often sensitive topics, especially for a younger audience? How do you approach handling these themes in a way that is relatable and age appropriate for young readers, while still conveying the emotional depth that your books are known for?
So I think that it's really important to tackle big themes when you're writing for children, because just because you're young doesn't mean that you don't experience emotions and go through tough times. And it's sort of patronizing to say, oh, we should only be writing sort of nice things for children, because one, children can handle the truth of lots of things, and two, children don't always experience nice things. And books, lots of them should reflect life. And I also think that we all basically, no matter where we come from and what our experiences are, feel happiness, anger, fear, and sadness. Those are like the core things that we all feel. And we can feel them about a big range of stuff. We can feel them because our parents are splitting up. We can feel them because our dog has died. We can feel them because our friend has invited us to their party. We can feel them because our friend hasn't invited us to their party. Like all of these things, we all understand those emotions. So I think that putting those emotions in books for children is, for me, it's easy because I know that they know what I'm talking about. And I don't have to be very graphic. I don't have to, give loads and loads and loads of detail, because children understand feelings and they want to read about them and they want to write about them. And I think that it would be wrong not to understand that when I'm writing a book. And I've been really lucky to work with loads of children. And I think that, as I become older and older myself, that keeps me knowledgeable about what affects them and what they're into, what they think about, how they think about things. And working with some of the children that I've worked with who have special needs or autism or their siblings has helped me understand like alternative lives, the lives that are they're common but they're hidden, I suppose is how I put it. That lots of people are affected by the things that I write about on some level. Even if they're not living wild off grid in the woods, they have felt that. Do I fit in? Can I make friends? Do I belong here? What should I do with my life? What should I do with my day? All of those things that children experience on a daily basis are in those books. So it's a real pleasure to write about them, and a privilege.
And you've done it incredibly well. And in both October and in The Light and Everything, you delve into these emotions so authentically. But in The Light and Everything, you skillfully present two distinct viewpoints from the perspectives of two very different children, Sophia and Tom. Sophia embodies a wild and free spirit, while Tom is portrayed as more introverted, yearning to be as small as possible. What stands out in your writing is how each chapter and how each child, how your writing adapts each child's personality. Zophia's chapters are filled with long sentences and a lot of rage. But Tom, on the other hand, and in the book, he describes his emotions as folding them away carefully inside himself. And his chapters are more controlled, more restrained. Could you share your process of distinguishing between both perspectives? How did you approach tweaking your writing style to align with each character's unique traits and emotional journey throughout the story? Was it challenging to do that and to stay true to their different voices?
I think it was the thing that I found most challenging about writing two perspectives is that you need to move the story along and you need to kind of show two different interpretations of the same event, but without making it repetitive. So you really have to work to make sure that your reader is, if the two characters are commenting on the same thing that's happened, your reader isn't like, yeah, I know that. You have to offer this new perspective. You have to offer this new insight. And sometimes I was like, what is that insight? But it became easier as I wrote, because I didn't write one story, and like I didn't write Sophia's story and then Tom's story. As you read it, that's how I wrote it. And I think that actually helped with the perspective of, how do they view it differently. But it was quite tricky to switch into a new voice. Every 500 words it was like, I'm a new person now. But I think it helped that I never really base characters on anyone or on myself. But obviously, if you're creating something from inside your head, they are a product of you and of everyone you've ever met. And I think both Tom and Sophia are kind of a bit like me, because I think that you can be, as a child, I was quite wild. I was quite I was tomboyish. I didn't want to be playing with dolls. I wanted to be out there climbing trees, but I was also quite cautious with my feelings. So I think that helped, that, I could understand both sides quite well, even though they seem contradictory. I think in the book, you come to realize that they're experiencing the same emotions, really. They're just dealing with them differently. And I think children often swing quite wildly between how they handle their emotions. I think one day, you can be screaming and shouting, and one day you can just be like, no, leave me alone. I don't want to talk to anyone. And you kind of go in on yourself. So I think, just being a person helps me write about people. And I've always been fascinated by people. Like, I just love reading about, like, the most boring things that people do. I could hear about them forever. Like someone just saying, and then I went to the shops, and then I saw my friend, and then I did this. I think it's wonderful. Like, I'm just like, tell me more, tell me more. How did that make you feel when you bought those oranges? But I love it. Like, the little details of everyday life I find fascinating, and I think that helps you build characters convincingly.
So a related question that actually goes into the why of it. So an audience member, Kanha, says, thank you for writing such a wonderful story. I just wanted to ask, did you write Sophia and Tom's thoughts separately, which you've just answered? And she's asked, was it easy to switch the characters, and why did you do it? Why did you do it like this?
So it wasn't my idea. I have to be honest. My editor, so that's the person that when I write my first draft, I write the book and then I send it off, and a lovely woman called Lucy, who works for Bloomsbury, which is my publisher, will send it back a bit like homework, saying, this is great, change this is working, this needs more work, that kind of thing. And before I started writing, I told her a little bit about what I wanted the story to be, and she went, that sounds great, but you need 2 voices in it. And I think she wanted it to be different enough from my other books that people who had read my other books would want to read it, but not feel like they were reading the same thing. And I think she thought, do 2 voices, show 2 sides of this story. And I was like, oh, God. And I was quite nervous about it, because I just not, I've not written that before. But she was absolutely right. And I think it works really well. And it was that's why she's a great editor. She has the best ideas for making books the best they can be. So often books are that process of collaboration. I put the words on the page, but the way that they're polished and shaped and ordered can be somebody else's idea. It's like making a film when you see all the cast at the end, all the people behind the scenes. That's in the book.
And it's worked so beautifully in this book, because we get to see both Sophia and Tom dealing with the same things. They have their insecurities, their fear of abandonment, and anxieties because of how their lives are changing. And you also show us how they process these emotions. Sophia, she loves the sea. She turns to it for comfort. And Tom finds similar comfort in origami. Additionally, there's also a deliberate parallelism in their actions. For example, in one chapter, Sophia spends 13 seconds underwater, and in the next chapter, Tom folds 13 paper owls. And that adds a compelling layer of connection between the characters. And you've done a brilliant job of showing your readers that beneath external dissimilarities, there lies a common thread of human emotions that unites us all. Did you intentionally plan to make these connections while you were writing the story?
So I never plan. I feel like planning for me ruins writing, because you have nothing to discover. And I don't know if you know painting by numbers. You can buy paint set and it has a picture on it that's already been drawn and it has like numbers on it and it can tell you which color to put and where, and so you've painted a lovely picture. But for me, the process of painting that picture is boring and the result is a little bit soulless. Whereas if you just write, stuff happens, and that's how I do it. Like, I just can't, I'm not very good at planning anyway, so that helps. But like, I just think that if I know exactly what's going to happen next and how these characters connect, or what that metaphor truly means, then it's not exciting for me as the writer, and therefore I don't think it'll be exciting for the reader. So there are things that I started to realize. I was like, oh, their lives are actually mirroring each other. The time that she's spending underwater is like Tom trying to spend more time in the dark. And, you know, the way that she deals with her anxieties is by kind of wanting to just sort of swim and shout. And the way that he does it is fold in on himself. But they're feeling the same thing, you know, their fear comes from the same place. But that was a discovery for me as I was writing it. And I'm sure I wrote it a little while ago, so I'm sure I was very deliberate in saying it's 13 seconds, 13 hours. But I wouldn't have, before I started writing the whole book, I wouldn't have been like, that's what I'm going to do. Because I think if you think about how many layers any book has, if you tried to plan that before every single moment of it, it would be impossible. It's like a book sort of evolves and becomes this huge thing with so many meanings and interpretations, and no writer can ever intend all of them. You know, it just, I don't know, that's the beauty of literature, I think, is it just grows and evolves, and it can change in the mind, you know, one person's mind and another person's mind. And didn't plan it, and I love it when people have new ideas about what I might have meant.
And I think that's also what brings like the authenticity to the characters, because you're literally discovering the characters as you write them, from what I've understood. We have I think you've already touched upon this a little bit, but Kyra Mohanraj asks, in the stories, Sophia and Tom are different. They have different tastes and they have different natures. Which one of them would you be?
I mean, I think I would be both, like I said. And I think, I don't know which one I want to be, because I think that they both have their positives, but they obviously both have their negatives. And I know a lot of people have said to me that they don't like Sophia. And I wonder sometimes why that is. I wonder if it's because she's a girl, but she's quite sort of forthright and shouty, and people aren't, I really, that was deliberate. I like it when, I can write girls who are kind of strong and a bit wild and not conforming to that stereotype. But people are like, oh, she's rude. And I'm like, well, she needs to learn how to express herself better, yes. But, she's not deliberately, generally cruel. She has moments of cruelty. We all do. Anyone who says that they've never had a cruel thought is totally lying. Like, they have. It's human nature, and that's the thing. She is very human. But then Tom, I have such a soft spot for him. I feel, he is so vulnerable, and, he is just trying to do his best for people, and he is creative and kind, and something that I would like to be. So I don't know which one I'd be. I think I'd like to be a mix of the two of them. I think probably a halfway point between Tom and Sophia is probably the best person you could be. And I'm not saying I'm there at all, but good and bad in both, as is always the way.
There is so much defying stereotypes that both Sophia and Tom do in terms of just how girls and boys should behave. So that's a brilliant way of breaking those stereotypes, I think. And so let's move on to our next question. The sea seems to be a recurring setting in your books. In your Carnegie Medal winning novel, October, the sea offers the protagonist, October, a space to be wild. And even in Light and Everything, Sophia is one with the sea. Tom is terrified of the sea initially, but as the story progresses, the sea becomes his light amidst the darkness. The book is also filled with metaphors of the sea. Why do you think you keep going back to the setting? And why do your characters repeatedly turn to the sea for healing? Has it ever helped you heal in your life?
I think so. For me, the sea, especially in the Light and Everything, is another character. I like settings to be a character. So in October, the river and the woods are always. With Sophia, it's wild and unpredictable and strong and just a bit bonkers. And how is it possible that you can have one thing that is everything. And yeah, I think that that's what nature, and in this case the sea, is. And I just think that I could probably write about that forever, because if something is everything, you can turn it into any story ever. And yeah, isn't that cool? But I like a setting. I like a natural setting. And in my next book, these two girls live in a wild land, which is marshes and fens, which are very sort of British countryside, very wild, very uninhabited. And I loved that as well, because I was like, this is a changeable landscape. It can hold you and keep you warm, and then the next day it can spit you back out and freeze you. I just think it's great, changing along the plot, along the characters' moods.
Well, yeah, thank you for that answer, because my next question was about your next book, Foxlight. And it also covers some sort of similar themes, because it is again about family and finding yourself. And there's like an interconnectedness between these two sisters from the little bit I read from the blog. So just to expand on that, are there any other future projects or themes that you're excited to explore in your upcoming work?
So I've just finished a book that will be out next year. I think this is the first time I'm talking about it. And it's set on a remote Scottish island. And again, it's about family. It's about connection between two siblings and their connection with the landscape. Because there's a girl who lives on this island, and only about 100 people live on it. It's really tiny. If you ever get the opportunity to go to a remote Scottish island, go, because they are beautiful and strange and wonderful. And, some of the people there they've lived there for generations, and it's amazing. But she lives there with her family, and her brother decides to leave. He decides that he wants more than that island can offer. And that's very difficult for her to deal with. And it's about how she can sort of reconnect to her family and to her past and to the land around her, when, everything she thought she knew and understood has been taken away from her and destabilized. So yeah, I'm quite excited about that one, because again, I got to write about a lovely landscape and people's feelings.
That sounds so interesting. So we're about 2 minutes away, 1 minute now, but I want to end with one last question from the audience. Prerna Karthik says, I love your book a lot. Will you write a sequel to this, which will be about the adventures of Sophia and Tom?
I mean, never say never, but I find when I write a book like this, it's finished. It's very strange. It's like this, it's a complete thing. And I feel like, you tie up all the ends in a bow, and that these characters and this world kind of exist almost in a snow globe. I think someone's asked a question about a snow globe. And I don't want to break it open again. It feels like everything is kind of settled and finished. And so at the moment, I feel like that I don't have any ideas for another story. And I just think where they are, I feel like I left them at a good point. I feel like they're okay on their own. But who knows, in a couple of years' time, I might think I've got that story growing in my head, and I want it. I want to write it now. I know when I was younger, I used to get so annoyed when my favorite authors, when I'd loved a book, said, no, I'm not writing any more of those characters. I'm like, come on, do it. I want to read more about them. I don't care what they're doing. I just want to read more about them. But now I'm a writer, I really understand it. And I just think I've left them and I've moved on, and, they're happy and settled.
And it's such a great ending. So maybe it's good to leave them there where they're nice and happy. So thank you so much for joining us today, Katya. It's been a pleasure speaking with you. We wish you all the very best with your upcoming work, and we eagerly look forward to reading it. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone, for coming. Thank you.